This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Ally Pankiw about I Used to Be Funny. How are you, Ally?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. I was at the premiere at South by Southwest last year of this
Oh
film.
my God, you've been with
So
us for a moment then.
I have. I also saw the movie before I saw Bottoms at the
Ah,
festival. So that was another
okay.
experience that I don't think a lot of other people had. So
I I did that double feature as well, yes, and it was like so incredible to see the duality of man present in in Rachel Sennott. Yeah.
Well, let's start with that. I mean, I think in a lot of ways she's a natural fit for this role, and in a lot of ways I wouldn't have thought of her for it. What was the process of working with her, and what did you see in her?
Well, now I had always wanted the character to be like an artist to represent, like what we lose interpersonally, but also culturally and societally when this type of thing happens to women and they lose like access to certain parts of themselves and their humor and their joy. And making Sam a stand-up was a very, I think, visual like representation of that like loss of humor in our lives, which I think is a very devastating blow to us as a culture. But and so I actually had known Rachel, so it was important to me that the character be legitimately a stand-up or maybe have some background in that, because I think it's really hard to pull off stand-up in films at all, and especially if your actors have never done it. So I had known of Rachel initially as a stand-up. I had seen her comedy just through being in the scene and knowing each other and going to shows. And I just thought she was so like singular and incredible, and specific. And so we knew each other a bit. And then I didn't know her acting. I'd seen like her digital, like her web series with IO for Comedy Central, which was so funny, but it obviously was like a harder comedy. Um, and then in the pandemic, I saw Shiva and was like, oh my God, like, wow, she can sort of do it all. And then shortly after that, we like offered her the role. Um, and we had this Zoom, like she read the script and like 24 hours later, she was like, yes, I want to do it. And we had this Zoom. And even just the way we spoke about the script and these issues with each other, it was very clear that like we were aligned on so much of it and the tone of it. And she was just perfect like at every stage that we were considering her. And then she was like incredible to work with too. So.
I also feel like having Jason Jones in the role that he has is another sort of unexpected because I watched him on The Detour and I think he's great, but that is not like you wouldn't see him there and then be like, this is the sort of cold-hearted, terrifying villain that we want here.
But I think the whole point of casting someone like Jason is that the people that do this are not like black and white, like, cold-hearted villains. They are the father figures in our society, and they are authority figures, and they are people that we work with and family members and people who are liked by many people in their lives. So I think it was important to cast someone who was, known predominantly culturally as likable, because again, the whole point is that no matter how like sort of like perfect a victim is, even though that's a fallacy, the fallacy of a perfect victim, and Sam represents that fallacy, there's still like Brooke, the Brooke character, is a metaphor for a part of our society that does not want to believe that these men that we know can do these things. And so yeah, Jason was, and he was just like so amazing to work with, and he fully understood like his role and his utility in this. And he was really great to everyone on set and was a great support as well. So yeah.
I think it's sort of like a less playful version of the promising young woman approach of like, let's cast all these, teen heartthrobs in these roles of people who we would think they're great, but there's
Yeah,
actually another, but then people still think they're great. People still see only the
of
positives, which is,
course. Well, because it's like we don't want to believe that the people in our society, in our lives, in our culture, who are meant to protect us can harm us, right? Like that's like a dissonance that is like really tricky for a lot of people. And so Yeah, I think this is definitely a less playful approach than that movie, but some similarities for sure.
What was was there a rule about how you wanted to balance the tone with some of the legitimately funny scenes and then the much more
Yeah.
dramatic, upsetting material?
Yeah, like for me, the tone was sort of the whole point. Like the fact that I think the way that we deal with these issues and talk about these issues as young women is always positioned in sort of a very extreme way in pop culture. Like we I had not seen this type of subject matter handled in a way that me and my friends actually talk about these themes and these issues. I did not see our gallows humor and our connection over these things represented on screen. And I did see things always framed as like a revenge narrative, or like if you get revenge, if you get retribution, if you get justice, even, which is like the gentler form of these stories, then you will be healed, or like that is recovery, or that is winning. And for trauma and for people with PTSD, like recovery and healing are about so many other things. They're not tied to like, individual events like that. And so yeah, I was just craving something that sat in the middle. It wasn't revenge, and it also wasn't like a complete like disappearance of a life. Like it was somewhere in between, and a more sort of normal day-to-day version of this, because it happens millions of times a day, and people carry this with them silently and in every aspect of our society. And so I just wanted to speak a little bit more to the interpersonal relationships that are affected, and the ripple effects of those things. Yeah, so yeah, it was a tightrope, but that's why I had really brilliant people in the roles who can walk the line of being like very funny before being inappropriate, and maybe sometimes a little bit inappropriate, but then they can walk it back. So it was really important to me to have real comedic voices who could, yeah, like walk that tightrope of tone with me. Hmm.
And seeing the film at its premiere at South by Southwest, were you surprised by the audience reaction to certain moments?
Um, I think the like laughs happened where we thought they would happen. I think what's interesting is like sometimes if people don't know where certain things are going, I think most people who watch the film like do know where things are going. It's not a mystery. It's not meant to be a thriller where you're like, I don't know what happened to this woman. I think most women that watch the film are like, I know exactly what happened to this woman. So it's not like meant to be a secret. But I think there is still some like there is this urge for people watching to be like, I do want to know what happened, because like I think we have that urge societally to be like, again, it's this weird thing where you're like, I need to know everything to like believe someone, and it's so this like sort of teasing out of detail and like challenging the audience to be empathetic without knowing everything is also like a parallel to sort of the impossible standards that victims are held to in the real world. But like there were definitely some times where I think if an audience didn't know where a scene was going, there would be like nervous laughter at first. Which again is like similar to being in some of the situations that are represented in the film, which is like as a woman, you are trying to sort of like make things okay. And you're like, well, if I can just be funny or charming or polite or nice, like everything will be fine. And so I think there were some like elements of watching it with the audience at South by where it was like, oh, we're a bit awkward. And so we're laughing. And then very quickly, there is that turning point, and that I think a lot of women know, where you go like, oh wait, it's not fine anymore. And like I felt that in the audience very palpably. And so that was interesting. And then there was one moment where the audience cheered for Rachel's character, which was a very, very nice surprise. I feel that in my heart for her when the character like acts in the way that she does, that elicited that. But I wasn't expecting like a whole theater to simultaneously have that reaction. And that was very sweet, a sweet moment. So yeah, but I won't spoil what that moment is. But I think you know it.
Well, I know that you've directed episodes of shows that I like The Great and Shrill. What was it like to have your feature debut, and was there anything that you didn't expect from that process?
Um, I think it was more like on like the actual shooting, like, a set is a set and there's like different challenges on each set. We had a lot less money and a lot less time to shoot my feature because it was an indie feature. So I've been a little bit spoiled in terms of resources being on like some of the bigger shows that I had done. So that was a bit of a like rude awakening to come back to indie filmmaking. Um, but I don't think there was anything that like was a shock in terms of the challenge of like actually executing it. I knew that it would be, we only had 18 days to shoot this film. So I knew that it was going to be a challenge going in. And I was just like, but we have to do it now because we have Rachel now. So like, this is just what it is. And you don't, give up an opportunity to have Rachel Sennott in something. So we just went for it. But I think the thing that's been surprising is like doing my TV work, even though I'm a director in that work or on that work, I'm not like out in front of things, like when something is being talked about, I'm a little bit like behind the project. And so I think what's been the biggest difference here is that like I wrote it, I directed it, I'm out in front of it. There's nowhere to hide. I think when you make a film that's like personal, you like forget that people are going to see it. Like it has been this really strange experience of like, oh wait, oh no, people have to actually watch it now. Like I made a film and now people have to watch it. So that's been like a surprising and interesting feeling. Just sort of the vulnerability of like, oh yeah, whoops, like I guess right. That's why I made it so that people could watch it. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question perfectly,
Hmm.
but hopefully it
No, it
danced
did. It
around
did.
it.
Do you know what you're doing next?
I do know one thing that I'm doing next, but I am not allowed to talk about it. And then I do have two features written that I'm trying to like set up and get financed and get made right now. And so whichever one goes first, they're both my children and I love them equally. And so whichever one goes, I will go do. But they're both dramedies as well, but one is more of like a traditional like rom-com structure. And yeah, so that would be very fun to do next, to have a bit of a palate cleanser from the sort of heavy subject matter of this one. Yeah.
Well, before I let you go, we love awards here at Awards Buzz, and I'm curious if there is anything, a film or a show or a performance that you've seen recently that you feel is particularly awards worthy.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say two because I'm gonna selfishly say Olga and Rachel in my film because them together was really they're a powerhouse duo. And I do think like everyone should discover Olga Petza, hopefully from this film, who plays Brooke, because she's really phenomenal. And she was only 14 when we shot, so I always like to call that out. Like she was truly the same age as the character, so like what a mature, brilliant young woman she is. Um, and then, but in something else, yeah. Okay, I've seen so much recently. Her name is June Squibb, right?
Mhm. Thelma.
In Thelma. Yeah. I mean, yeah, incredible. Like, come on. That's what more could you want, So I think that's a good answer.
That is a fantastic answer. I am excited about what's coming next for you, and I hope everybody gets to discover I Used to Be Funny and see what you
Oh,
and everyone else can do.
thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and you watching and being there at South by. That's crazy. It's been like so long since it premiered there. So thanks for sticking with it.